Masters in Language Learning since 1975, when I interviewed at the Air Force Academy. The head of the department there said, after we had talked and we were interested, and I was thinking whether I wanted to take an MBA that I'd got at the University of Missouri and turn that into a career in business and industry, or to stick around and make the Air Force a 20-year career. And he said, we're looking forward to seeing you and your family here next year. And I hadn't really said I was going to do that. But then he said, oh, by the way, Mike, we're interested in looking at using the computer in language teaching. And I had done work here at BYU as an undergraduate, and I decided that the computer could in fact be a tool for personal use in various ways. That was conveyed to me by my professor at the time, Richard Beal. So I have been thinking about this for a long time, been doing it for only slightly less time, with grants, money from here and there, and building this and that. So with me today, we have Richard Kearsley, who's a master's student in Richard, it's his dad, sorry. This is Logan Kearsley. I happen to know Logan's dad. And Logan Kearsley, and he's in the master's program in computational linguistics. Graduated from BYU as an undergraduate in computer science, and has been an employee from the lab, both going back before his mission in Ukraine and then here after his mission, finishing his undergraduate now in the master's program. Elizabeth Todd is a master's student in second language teaching. She was a music major as an undergraduate and is now, but served a mission in Russia and is now getting very close to completing her thesis for her master's degree in second language teaching. Jong-Woon Kim has done her undergraduate in international relations, but then she served a mission. She speaks both Mandarin and Cantonese Chinese, which this is something that very few Chinese people actually do. So she has a master's in teaching English teaching English to speakers of other languages, a TESOL certificate, and she's also has a master's degree in language acquisition and teaching, and she's working on her PhD here in instructional psychology and technology. Is that everybody? Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about IML. That stands for International Media Library. We're doing this as part of a grant that we received with the American Council for International Education in Washington. They do a lot of projects for a lot of different people dealing with testing, with language teaching, and so we went to the flagship program, which sponsors advanced language programs at universities around the country in less commonly taught languages. The purpose of that organization is to promote national language capacity, and primarily in these languages that are not taught as often as others. We have a Chinese flagship here at BYU. The proposal was to create the flagship media library, and all of our documentation was using the term FML. Another one of my students who's now graduated said, we don't want to call it FML. I said, why not? And she said, go look at Urban Dictionary. So if you don't know, you can look it up as well. But we made it IML for International Media Library. Okay, and so we stylized the name and came up with IML as a website holding the spot iml.org. And we have a site here at BYU that's implemented our instantiation of this system that we've been building. It's called iml.byu.edu. We'll be showing you some samples from that. But the subtitle is Acquiring Language Through Online Video Technology. Logan reminded me, well, it's not just video, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. We're going to give you a brief overview of the system. That'll include a little bit more historical perspective about where I come from. We'll talk a little bit about the technology, some of the standards that we've implemented for building the software that we've put together. And we have two research projects that Elizabeth and Jong-Woon are conducting for their degrees, and they'll show you how they're using the system to learn about learning and the kind of data collection that we can do that's enabled by the way we built the system. We'll do that in Russian and Chinese. And we want to try to save some time for discussion at the end. So we're going to try to bounce through this stuff pretty quickly. But I'd like to say a quick word about forecasting the technology. It's really tough to forecast what's going to happen with technology, especially when it involves the future. So we can think about lots of different kinds of forecasts that have been done. This one was from a Western Union internal memo saying that telephone never going to be useful. Well, of course, it was going to steal their business. So then there's this famous one from Thomas Watson. But there's probably a world market for about 5 computers. Much to my wife's chagrin, I've got 5 computers in our cold room downstairs. And she says, what are we doing, starting a museum here or what? And then there's this famous one here from Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, trying to sell this idea of a personal computer and basically rebuffed at every turn, and with the primary rationale from HP being, you don't have a college degree, you can't do anything useful. It was sort of a way of putting him down. I really like this one though, because it says a lot about what we're talking about. Books will soon be obsolete in the schools, and every branch of human knowledge will be taught with a human picture, with a motion picture. And this is what he was talking about. So Paul Sappho says it takes about 20 years for any new innovative idea to become an overnight success. Movies have been projected now for 100 years for taking over education. We're not there yet, and I dare say the textbook is not going to be disappearing anytime soon. But he also said the school system will be completely changed. That also has not happened. So whenever we forecast, we're going to be wrong twice. We're going to overestimate what's possible in the near term, in many cases, except for in many cases, and we'll underestimate the long term. So what's fun for me is that this was my early years with interactive video. We actually delivered video on the monitor here from 3/4-inch U-matic with questions on a VAX mainframe delivered on this monochrome terminal. We went from that to a lab that involved workstations. You'll see one of the basic flaws. We didn't have enough money to buy one for every student that needed to be there, so we put in a headset for the student and a chair for that student, a headset and a chair for there. But there was only one mouse, which right away violates one of the basic ideas that we have behind interactivity. But when we put those in, those things cost $8,000 a piece to put in what was essentially a microcomputer here, a video disc player there that gave us access to 1/2 hour of video, and then a monitor here, and then the mouse there.
And this was very big stuff at the time. This
Very big stuff, and that's where I got to know Andy, was at YCAT back in those days, and YCAT had done some of the seminal research in this area. And for many years, I would say that we can almost do with streaming video what we can do with video disc technology. We're going to show you some things today that actually go beyond what we could do with video disc back in those days. What's fascinating is what this would cost today would be $12,000. And here we are faced with devices that we can put into our pocket or carry in our hand, and there's really no practical reason why the stuff we were doing here can't be done there, but we're not quite there yet in terms of the software we need to make it happen. So that's what we're working on. So the key question is, given that we've got all these incredible technologies, what role can they play in helping students spend the time that's necessary to succeed at one of the most complex of all human behaviors, learning a foreign language? It's a huge challenge, but we're convinced that technology can do a lot in facilitating this overall process. Now we're going to talk today about IML. We're going to mention here how it is able to communicate with a learning management system that has been enabled with learning tools interoperability. Basically a standard protocol that allows your content providing system to work in conjunction with the LMS. Students basically get directed, and they're able to do some really interesting things. We can call the subtitles up down the screen. We have a full transcript. We can click anywhere on the transcript to jump to that part of the movie. This is where now we can do more with streaming video than we could do with video disc, because we only had access to 1/2 hour on one side of one video disc. We're using this to access full-length feature movies, as I'll show in just a moment. So students watch the video, and then they answer questions. Now, what we're saying here, we have built Playgraph as a prototype. It's basically I'm gonna let Logan talk about that, but we'll save that and let you know, this is what we started work on. We just submitted a grant yesterday to Instructure for $10,000 to help us take this to the next level. It allows us to add the interactivity that, to the use of the video. So basically, if we ask the question, okay, you saw the video, now what profession did the doctor start out in? And you pick the answer. If you get it wrong, then you go back to the spot in the video, you jump back to the portion of the transcript where he says, I started out as a dentist. So you show this much video, and then you ask the question on this much, and if they miss the question, you show them this much. So there's a very simple level of interactivity that we were doing many years ago. I actually did this on a Texas Instruments TI 994A. So this is not really new stuff, but it's not, I can't do it with Learning Suite, for example. I can say, go watch the video, and I can give you a quiz on it, but the idea, if you miss the answer on the quiz, let's go back and remediate by showing you what you need. This is not done that often, yes.
Dr. Bush, is the quiz inside the LMS, or is it in your tool?
Playgraph will be a tool that will connect to IML. We're going to talk about that in a moment.
But do you do it like inside of this environment, or do you
Yes,
do it?
well,
The answer is yes.
okay. The answer is yes, but PlayML is not part, Playgraph is not part of IML. It's a separate system that accesses this, and it communicates with the LMS. We've got a graphic that illustrates that. Charles?
Yeah, I was gonna just ask a similar thing, but maybe you're gonna show it later. I'm interested in knowing how you use LTI to connect the pieces together meaningfully.
We're doing
You're
it
gonna
one
show
way.
that.
I'm going to show that. I'm going to actually demonstrate that in just a moment
Okay.
here. So basically, we're communicating with the LMS, and then IML will report scores back to the LMS. So if with Playgraph, we don't have Playgraph running in its final form yet, but that's how it's going to happen.
That's the next slide.
Go ahead. So the next slide.
Click on the next.
Yeah, so then the teacher can see what's going on in the LMS and get a sense for what needs they have, assign grades or whatever. So Playgraph then is separate from IML. It does the communication, and then it also communicates, and we've got a slide that's going to illustrate the full Monty, so to speak. So we have this sequence of instruction that Playgraph is providing.
Do the videos and the instruction within IML, is that embedded into Canvas? Or is it you click on something in Canvas and you're out somewhere else? And,
Yes,
and it
you
just-
click on it, and I'm going to show it here just in about 2 more slides here.
Okay.
So Playgraph basically is sequencing the instructional interactions that are done online, drawing content from IML and communicating itself out to the learning management system. And so at this point, we're able to have things reported, in this case, from Playgraph. So Playgraph gets its content from IML, and then it goes out. So I actually moved the full slide, so Logan will be able to talk about it here in just a second, which is this one right here. So I'm going to stop here, but this is how the whole thing is fitting together. IML makes a call to Playgraph. We can bring in content from other sources. We can play Flash video, HTML5 on the HTML5 canvas. We stream video from Brightcove or YouTube or from a simple web server. In fact, we're getting, for low volume use, we actually prefer the performance we're getting right now. We're piggybacking on the church's contract with Brightcove, and it was set up wrong. So we're doing progressive download rather than streaming. So you'll see this in just a moment. And we're bringing in definitions from other resources. We have dictionaries that were produced here at BYU that we've put online. We can do word reference, we can do Google Translate to do some of the stuff we're going to show you now. So let me then go over to the so I'm in Instructure. I've logged in, and I go to assignments. And this, I mean, you all are familiar with Learning Suite, Instructure. They're operating somewhat the same. The difference here is that there we go. So here are the assignments that we've created. This is in a conversation class that I taught. So I click on that. This is we're now connecting to IML. It's gonna open it in a new window. It said, there's some security issues here, you should want to do this. It opens IML in a separate tab, and it goes to that spot in the movie, exactly what I want the students to see. Now, when I don't do it this way, I have to tell them, go watch from minute 36 to minute 75. And then they're responsible for watching, but here it goes right to that spot in the movie. We play at that point, and do we have some audio here?
Ah voilà, vous avez parlé du Mathilde. Donc c'était bon. C'est un bon copain, Fred. Super guide.
Ah oui, super. Beau garçon en plus.
Ouais. C'est vrai ce qu'il a dit, votre frère, quand vous êtes propre?
So I can double click on a word, and it will go over here to definitions. It found frère, which means brother. It found that in the dictionaries that we have. So we have a server that's sitting there providing the dictionary, the definitions, the lookup, that additional assistance. If I click on something that might not be in our dictionary, then it goes to word reference, and I click on word reference, I can go get the full dictionary definition. One of the things I do in this class is teach students how to use a dictionary. What some of these arcane sorts of indications, what they actually mean and how they can be useful in their language learning experience. If I click and drag across the whole sentence, it's not going to find it in the dictionary. It's going to go to Google Translate. It's true what he said, your brother. Qu'est-ce qu'il a dit? Okay, so that's not a real good translation. We all know that Google Translate's not great, right? But in this case, the English is the speaker, the language of the learner, and so they can look at it, and I teach my students, hey, this is not going to be exact, but it does help you understand what's going on. They can also take these words and add it to a word list, and then we can then go look at the word list, and we can choose to pick elements from that word list and actually insert that into, in this case, it's not working and calling it this way, so we're going to leave this, but I put it into a deck from Quizlet. Okay, now questions there. I'm going to load this up slightly different approach here so that others can get to what they need. Yes, question?
Would it be possible for you, when people are trying to look up a sentence, to have a native language speaker who understands both languages, kind of insert something like, all right, this wasn't quite right, this phrase, so maybe we can have our own content and input that here and say.
Great idea. What's the problem with it?
Elizabeth's gonna talk about that.
Say again?
Elizabeth's gonna
Elizabeth will talk about that.
All right.
Okay, so hold that question.
Point at me when you talk about
But
it. I don't know.
we can do that, but it's expensive. That's what I was getting at. That's the issue. Yes.
I'm assuming because you're using LTI that it automatically logs the student, it authenticates the student? in
Yes,
IML?
exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly what it's doing. And in fact, what I'm going to do here is access it another way. Here's a movie that we've just watched, and I'm taking way more than 5 minutes here, which I guess is. So here's a movie, and I can up here say. Wait a minute. Now see, that's the problem. I need to re-log in actually, because it actually authenticated me as a student. That's what I was trying to avoid a second ago. So I'm gonna kill my browser, come back in, and then sign in. So when I log in now, it will know that I'm a professor, but it had told my browser, this is a student, so some things that will show up now did not show up before because it had me logged in as a student.
Is this available to everybody, or is it just if you sign up for a course, or what?
Right now, it's available to certain folks, but we're to the point now where we're ready to start having other people use it in other languages. Now, the one thing that I do need to show is the tool that Logan has been the major brainchild for the caption development software that is, and I.
It's under the text menu.
Say again?
It's under the text menu.
Okay, so here I want to, yeah, that's how I get to that. I wanted to first show add to LMS. So this is where I get the keys that I need to go over to Instructure and make the authentication possible. So I bring these keys to simply copy, and right now it's a copy and paste operation. And with standards coming down the line, that communication will actually be simplified, but right now it's a copy and paste. Seth?
Are you able to do that with any video in another language, or do you have a preloaded videos?
You can put any video you want, and you can
I'll
read.
talk about that.
He's gonna talk about that.
You writing
All
all
right,
this?
so let me just quickly show you this here with launching Captionator. I don't speak Arabic, but I just happened to click on that one. So we're calling up, this is video that another project, also federally funded by Flagship. We had a team in Cairo and another team in Damascus before the Middle East fell apart, started the falling apart process. But we've interviewed 10 professionals in Cairo and 10 professionals in Damascus. And we've been using this tool to transcribe. So I load up I have various, in this case, various types of transcriptions. I can go look at those. I can look at that spot in the video. And if I come into here, I can add text to the subtitle.
Only if you pause it, so that
Yeah,
it'll
only
go
if you
away.
pause it. So we can do this in Chinese, Japanese. We've tested it in quite a few languages. Back when I started thinking about this stuff, that was a really, really hard problem. Now with Unicode, those issues are
Still a really hard problem, but not quite as hard.
you see why I always have these guys with me. So, but I can click anywhere in the transcript. I can do that with a full-length movie. I can click at the end or the beginning and be exactly to that spot.
Do you have an MP3 file on your computer?
No.
Ah,
Now,
dang it.
Logan has added the capability to actually have the audio waveform down here to make the alignment of the subtitles easier. But it's very easy to come in and say, I want to add another subtitle. I click and drag. I can change the scale that I'm viewing of the thing. So you can use this for annotating video, for creating comments about video. It's actually a very powerful tool. You can do it in any language. Not only that, you can have, and Joan Wynn's going to show with work that she's done, 4 different types of subtitle tracks using the tool that you can have them all on the screen at one time. Well, I don't know if anybody's going to watch a movie with 4 subtitle tracks playing at the same time, but you could imagine an activity where you might decide to turn that on and say, now look at how it's done in traditional versus simplified.
Okay, so somebody was asking if you can play whatever video you want. Yes. So one of the major technologies we've been working on is the IML video player. The IML video player isn't really a video player in the same sense that like the YouTube video player is, or like Windows Media Player or something like that. It doesn't actually know how to play any video at all, but it knows how to find stuff on the internet, and it knows which other pieces of software will be able to play whatever video you give it. So when you're working with IML, if you go find a YouTube video that you really like that you want to use in a class, or if you have some footage that Dr. Bush paid somebody to record in Syria that isn't on the web or whatever, you can put in just about anything, put in a reference to whatever it is that you found that you want to use, and the IML video player figures out how to present that to the student in a reasonable fashion, and then adds all of our branding and annotation capabilities around it. So it can play from Flash Video, HTML5, Brightcove, YouTube, and we're working on integrating Vimeo and a few other sources. So, does this have a laser pointer?
Yeah, the next slide is actually Elizabeth, so. Yeah, the laser.
Which one is the laser? It's the laser. Ooh, yeah, there. Flash Video, HTML5, Brightcove, YouTube.
But you talk about the arrows, Logan, and tell us
Yeah.
what's going on there.
Yeah, so another big component is this thing called the resource library. The resource library is where you put all the references to the media that you want to use. It's a big searchable index that tells you things like, oh, you wanted a video of somebody speaking Egyptian Arabic and talking about buying groceries, well, here's a list of things from YouTube or Vimeo or a university archive that have that in them. And IML uses the data from the resource library to present stuff to students. Dr. Bush showed you kind of how these things work already. We have, in addition to just being able to show subtitles, oh, question?
Just real quick about the resource library.
Yeah?
When it's finding that information, are these things like coded with keywords, so that's how it searches by? Or just-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's sort of the responsibility of whoever found it in the first place. When they're adding something to the resource library, you're asked to provide various descriptions and keywords and stuff. Just because indexing video is really hard. If you have a transcript, then it can index the transcript because we know how to do search engines for text. So adding transcripts to videos really helps. And Dr. Bush showed you already a brief snippet of the tool that we have to make transcripts. But we have some really powerful text annotation capabilities. So in addition to subtitling, you can get the automatic dictionary lookup. You can click on links in subtitles. And as Dr. Bush mentioned briefly, IML isn't just for video, and neither is the resource library. We can do long-form text and apply all of our annotation capabilities to long-form text, not just text that appears in subtitles. We can also do annotations on still images and pretty much any other kind of media you might want to show to a student at any point. Playgraph is sort of a generalization of the idea of a playlist. So Playgraph is, well, IML is not just restricted to video, Playgraph is also not just restricted to IML. It's sort of a framework for saying, I want to show a bunch of things to a student in a certain order based on rules. And it will work with anything that has a URL and can make web requests. Basically, the way that works is Playgraph contains a bunch of nodes with pointers to various URLs, and at a particular node, it will show the student a particular web page from a particular URL, and then when you click away from that web page, the request goes through Playgraph. Playgraph sees what you did on that web page, and it decides where it's going to redirect you next. And so I'm going to back up a little bit. So that's what was going on in these slides. IML can implement LTI and talk to an LMS directly, but when you want to do more complicated stuff, that data, still using LTI, gets ferried through Playgraph and then forwarded to the LMS after Playgraph has figured out, well, what does the student actually need to see next in this course, lesson, quiz, or whatever.
Just say a couple of words about
Yeah.
LTI, or LTI experience, activity stream, or from activity stream to forward to,
Right.
to the California.
You closed the window that had the cool demo for that, so let's go back to the internet for a moment so we can show that off.
While you're doing it, then while you find that, we've implemented so far, well, everything we do is standards-based, and to the extent that's possible. And we use web services for the whole modularization of what we're trying to do. So the point is not to build a huge monolithic system that does everything, but to build units that can communicate with other units, modules that can communicate with other modules using a standard API. So we've implemented so far LTI for communicating with the LMS. We're tracking student interactions with the system using activity stream that Facebook has done. People are building on that idea now and creating, there are two other standards that are in process. The one that's a little bit further along is the Experience API from ADL, from the Advanced Distributed Learning Initiative, And they've looked at Activity Stream and said, okay, we want to be able to use, or to keep track of what people are doing with the system, huh?
Is Saint-Jacques not public?
No.
Oh. How do you get back to Saint-Jacques Connect, please?
Let's skip that, because we're almost out of time.
Okay.
We need to give them 5 minutes each, so.
All right, never
Let's
mind then.
just tell them about it.
Okay, so when you're interacting with any piece of content on IML, typically a video, there is, in addition to LTI, another cool standard called Activity Stream for basically recording everything that somebody does on a web page, or everything that you consider relevant that they're doing on a web page.
I have a file that shows it. Keep talking.
Okay. So, in addition to just, returning test scores or whatever, IML can also make use of the activity stream standard to return any kind of analytics data that a teacher considers important in their course, like what subtitles did they pause on, what words did they click on to get definitions for, what videos did they view in which order and for how long, what annotations did they click on, and all of that can be exported in a nice spreadsheet for you to look at, but it can also be returned directly to an LMS or through Playgraph to an LMS for later analysis.
Let's
So-
go with Elizabeth.
Okay, so I have just concluded my thesis data collection portion, and we're in the process of analyzing the data right now, but I was going to tell you about how we use IML to gather information on student activity in viewing subtitled video. So they watched a Russian movie with Russian subtitles, and with the, oh you got me through it. Okay. First of all, our participants were advanced L2 speakers of Russian, ages 18 to 30. All across the US, we got some international participants as well, in Germany, Canada, and Sweden. Our main research question was what type of word lookup method is most conducive to vocabulary acquisition. So we have 3 treatments and a control group. So some students, some words were given a glossed definition, which told you the definition of the word only in the sentence where it appeared. The second treatment is dictionary definition. So if they clicked on a word with this treatment, it would give them the definition that you'd find in a dictionary, which could actually be maybe 10 different definitions, gives you a part of speech, maybe an example of how it's used, pronunciation. Annotated definition was the third treatment, which gave an explanation of why the word is being said in this way, or how it got conjugated or declined into this certain tense. And then there was a control group where we had target words that were highlighted, but when students clicked on them, they got no definition. So to compare all those and see which best facilitated vocabulary acquisition. So, yes, we already talked about. Okay, so our participants were not our subjects. They were more like our machine for processing the words through. Our subjects, or unit of analysis, what we've decided to call them, were the words themselves.
And how they were treated.
How the words were treated, yes, the treatment of the words. Yes, so we treated our words as our subjects and put them into 4 different groups, including a control group, rather than breaking up the students into 4 groups, which included a control group. So they took one survey, gave the basic demographic and linguistic information. They took a vocabulary pre-test, watched the movie, took a vocabulary post-test, and then gave feedback on how they liked watching with captions and annotations. So yes, they watched video music. We talked about what these definitions are. And then using the IML activity tracker, we're seeing which words they clicked on, how much time they spent on each word, and we're going to use that to analyze which seemed to be most effective. And so that's what we're at right now. And then you were asking about, what if we just put native speakers, let native speakers put in, like a direct translation, kind of? And that's kind of how I had to do all of my information here, because I had to disable the dictionary function so that they couldn't click on any word and get a dictionary definition. They could only click on target words that I wanted them to get a definition for. So I had to hand input 120 different treatments, treatments for different words. So I mean, a native could do that, and that would be the best case scenario. But it takes a lot of time and money, and that's what my data is hopefully going to contribute for. So because glossed definitions take a lot of time and money, have to be hand done, preferably by a native. Dictionary definitions already exist. You don't even need a person who speaks the language, pretty much. You can just plug them in. And so if the data shows that dictionary definitions are more conducive to vocabulary acquisition, that's going to save educators and those creating the textbooks and everything a lot of time and money.
Just out of curiosity for this study, how did you define acquisition?
Just based on their performance on the post test. So recognition, not necessarily production.
So
And
word
short
to
term.
one recall, like this is the English word we're looking at compared to the Russian word.
Yeah, so they got the English word as a prompt and had 6 Russian words for choices that they could use. So, kind of a operationalized term, and then I think that's it.
I'd like to talk about how my involvement in the IML became my design and development project and also became the basis for my dissertation. So the need of the project was that, as we know, we talked about advanced language learners struggle with enough resources for their acquisition of foreign language. You know that as you kind of reach that level, advanced level, it's hard to get really distinctive focus. Like, for example, if you want to study law in Chinese, then you kind of struggle with that. There are resources everywhere, but good instructionally treated materials are very few.